fantasy author tropes, or not just fantasy, but we've gone into that before. We can go into that. Are like tropes, and what someone's in the trope. How do you see without the trope? You know,
Right.
or backwards. Like it's kind of a reversed awareness or something. Awareness month.
Yeah, the trope of you can almost point to it anyway, just like the chosen one trope or villain trope or anything like that. Like any kind of normal trope, if the trope is something entirely different, then that becomes the outlier, and then it's like, oh, inventing a new trope or something. But the fact that we've started from this place, that we have all these really useless things like redemption arcs, which we've gone into, and all this other stuff, as if people are inherently problematic with themselves and don't know what's going on with them and can't learn and all this stuff, and they have to go through huge amounts of suffering just to figure out the most basic stuff of life. And like when you're starting with art that is portraying that, going into everyday life, and that the only type of like story that anybody hears is portraying that, what do you think you're going to get? And then that perpetuates more stories of that. And it's just like, why can't people just learn that peace isn't that hard? You're sitting here. If somebody's sitting in place, they could be at peace or they could be completely miserable, and they're just sitting there. And can we start from the other side and understand that, so we can work our way into that? And it's like flip, like you can't get to peace from suffering. It doesn't work that way. And it's tricky, so tricky.
I think that's a good point of that, like what awareness is, like starting just here, and like no matter what is happening outside of this, you can either be miserable or happy, and to be aware of, like, to realize that, then that's like the beginning point of the flip, kind of, you know.
Yeah, and then like, not to get ahead of where we begun, like Krishnamurti, Alan W. Anderson style, but that perpetuates more of itself. Like if you start from that point, it perpetuates more of its stuff. But everybody's starting from the other point. That's why it perpetuates more of that, and it's hard to reach into. Like people just doing good for the sake of goodness, and it's like just the fact that we say something like that, doing good for the sake of goodness. It's like, no, that is the basic starting point of how somebody exists, but if it's not, it's hard to reach, and we think we don't think it perpetuates more of itself or something, or like people think like you need to go through things to figure out more, or it's strugglesome, or if I do good things all the time, something bad might happen, like anything like that, because we don't understand, because we're coming from this side, like the world in general. Where to flip to the other side, then you can't even use the same terminology.